Welcome back to the Hawkins Report, a Stranger Things podcast by LSG Media. I'm your host, Dean.
I'm Jessica.
And on this week's episode, we're talking Chapter 1, The Vanishing of Will Byers. I'm Dean. That's Jessica. Say hello, Jessica.
Well, hello.
We are going to be launching a feed for this. If you're listening to this, you're either listening to this on the Science Fiction Film Podcast, or you are listening to it on its own feed, which will become a thing shortly. So hopefully you found it, which means we probably have some new listeners who've never heard us before. So hopefully you stick around for some 80s nostalgia as it relates to Stranger Things. Jessica, we started watching this a few days ago, and you started, I started. We got into about 3 or 4 episodes, and then we said, we better stop now if we're going to podcast about this. So full disclosure, we've seen a few episodes.
Yeah.
So we know a couple of spoilers, but we're going to pretend that we don't. Unfortunately, we don't know anything major that happens. Most of it is still pretty much shrouded in mystery, except for a couple things.
This is the story of how this podcast came to be. I'd like to share it with everybody.
Please do.
I had the day off, and I said, I'm going to binge watch this show on Netflix because that's what I do when I have the day off. I watched the first episode. I really liked it, and I thought Dean would really like it. So I mentioned it to him, and he was like, I guess I'll watch it. I then watched the first episode again the same night so that Dean could watch it. And then we proceeded to watch 3 more episodes. Now, when I rewatched episode 1 the first time, I asked Dean if I should take notes in case we did a podcast. And he said, no, I don't think so. So today I watched the episode for a 3rd time.
There you go.
I knew we were going to podcast about it. I just sensed it from the start.
So there you have it.
So yes, we've watched 4 episodes, and now we are going to stop, and we are going to basically watch an episode and then podcast about it as if we were watching it live on TV.
That's right. And we may release more than one a week. We don't really have a release schedule yet, which I know is podcasting 101, but it just depends on how things are going to go. Now, the first thing I want to say is that we are recording this live on Mixlr, which is mixlr.com/LSG-media. That's Mixlr, mixlr.com/LSG-media. Now, it's very important that I mention a couple of things right away. If you are in the chat, if you join us in the chat, do not spoil episodes beyond the episode that we're talking about.
Please.
If you do, I will fucking ban you from the chat because that's bogus. Don't do that shit.
Don't hurt people like that.
We know a couple of episodes ahead, but only a couple, and we're not going to spoil either. We're going to go through this pretending we don't know it's coming, and we're going to do this the way we always do, which is we're going to have some opening thoughts. We'll explicate our way through this. We may do a few listener comments now and again, and then we'll close out with some final thoughts, which will at times talk about predictions. In this case, we won't.
Yeah, for the first 3 episodes, we can't give you predictions because we know what happens next.
Yeah. So just remember that we do not want you guys to spoil anything in the chat. Please be considerate of those who haven't seen ahead. And that's one of these things that is with the Netflix originals. And this is the first Netflix original we've covered.
We did a Hulu original once.
We did. And there have been some good ones, but Hulu released that every week.
Yes, which made it easier to cover without the spoiler
which was
situation.
11/22/63.
This is a little different because we're going to try and power through it and get through the episodes in the podcast while people are still interested in it before the next binge watch comes out.
Sure. Yeah, this is our first experience with doing something that's been watched.
Binge watched.
Binge watched. I can't speak, but I have a podcast. Go figure. So we are going to dive right into this episode. The first thing I think we need to talk about is the open. We're going to talk about the credits.
We're going to talk about our initial impressions.
We're going to talk about all of that stuff. So do you want to start with your initial impressions? The first thing I want to do is I want to guide your initial impressions a little because I'm very curious.
Good Lord. I'm just kidding.
When this show started, tell me what you were feeling after the opening incident, which was the man running through the hallways. Then it started with the title screen, and then it went right to the kids playing D&D in the basement. What were you feeling in those first few minutes of this episode? What was going through your head?
I was immediately into it. It very much to me, and I know we've gotten a lot of comments about this, and I agree with what everybody says. It feels like Super 8. It feels like Stephen King, The Losers Club.
Yeah.
It feels like It Follows. It feels very 80s and nostalgic, and It's lovely. I love things where kids are your protagonists like this. It's very Stephen King and something that he's really good at and does well. And if you haven't seen Super 8, that's something really worth seeing because that's also fabulous with a similar idea to it.
Right. Which was an homage film.
Yeah.
Super 8.
And this sometimes feels like that too.
Yeah, I think so. I think it clearly shows the love that the creators for it have, which we should probably have their names up somewhere.
The Duffer Brothers.
Duffer Brothers.
I don't know, something like that. Yeah, Duffer Brothers.
I was immediately taken with this when the title card came up. The Stranger Things music started to play. This synth 80s sound that has a percussive and electronic noise to it. I have been a fan of this kind of music forever. This to me pays homage to a lot of things that I loved growing up. Escape from New York, just those different John Carpenter sounding sound effects. John Carpenter meets Tangerine Dream meets very minimalistic 80s sounds that, in my opinion, dates in a good way the whatever you're watching. It puts it in a certain feeling. It gives you a tone. And the tone is set immediately with this. Now, the opening of this starts off with a man running through the reinforced door. We got strobing lights, a klaxon ringing through the halls. He runs to an elevator. He looks up. He gets pulled up into the ceiling. And then the title card comes up.
You know what this makes me think of? And it's totally a different thing, but The Stand.
Yeah.
The person in the laboratory and something weird is going on, and what is it? And people rushing around. And I know then it's Captain Trips and people getting sick, and this is a crazy demon thing or alien thing. But it still is that same, I know people like X-Files, but like to me, it's just like Stephen King, everything about it.
Yeah. It is. It sets the tone very quickly. It sets it fast. And with The Stand, you had, I believe, Blue Oyster Cult was playing
in the movie.
Don't Fear the Reaper. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you have this sort of callback music, which is interesting. The music choices in this, outside of what they composed for the opening credits here, you have Toto and a few others. They actually use White Rabbit at the end, which is an interesting choice. And I'm looking forward to talking about that a little bit. But yeah, there is a lot of that going on in this. A lot of Stephen King. I saw some write-up said it's Stephen King and John Carpenter and this and that and all these things meshed together with a little bit of Spielberg thrown in and the little kids movies, the Goonies, Stand By Me. I think
also Stephen King.
I think Stephen King, Stand By Me, or The Body, I believe, is as it's called.
The book, yeah. The novella is The Body.
It's been a long time since I have watched something where I immediately felt something. I felt a connection, a nostalgic connection, but more than that. It's not just nostalgia, but this characterization of these kids happens pretty immediately. And I think these kids are fabulous. And that's the outside of the tone that is set for this TV show, the immediate thing I noticed was the children and the way they were presented to us, the way these kids took on their roles. I thought they were great.
They're wonderful.
They were super good. Mike Wheeler was great. Apparently, he's going to be in It.
Oh, he is? Of course he is. Why wouldn't he be? He's perfect. Who's he going to play?
Look it up. It'll tell you.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. I forget who's going to. I think, I don't remember. But, yeah, he's going to be in It. And these kids just did a good job right away. I guess they auditioned a bunch of kids. And it was a bit of a process.
Richie Tozier. Oh, my God.
Yeah, the hardest kid to play.
Oh, I'm so excited.
He did all the imitations, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, good stuff. Again, just the typeface that they use is a very much Stephen King. If you look at the cover of his books, if you look at the way they line it up. And I believe Stephen King is a fan of this show. I think he has expressed his approval for Stranger Things.
He did, and I liked it on Facebook, so don't you worry. I was right on top of that. I know what Stephen King's doing at all times.
So before we break out of the lab and past the credits and into the Wheelers' home for some D&D, did you have any knocks on it? Was there anything you weren't sure about?
No, I was really I liked that it was opened and it was weird. I knew it was going to be a sci-fi show. And I was sold from the previews because if anybody knows anything about me, one of my favorite things is like murder and missing people. I basically am obsessed with it. So when it was Missing Kid in Small Town in the 80s, I was sold.
Yeah,
I didn't even need the rest of it. So that was just an extra bonus that you can put two things that I love together, science fiction and missing people.
There you go. Yeah, it's good with a horror bend on it too. In that, one of the things I said to you was the only thing I would say about it that I thought was a little weird is that you're focusing on kids, but you have these very much adult themes. And at times I felt like, is this supposed to be light or heavy? Because as soon as you put a missing kid in, it's really heavy. And I thought about that when I watched Stand By Me. It's a very light movie, but it has these very mature things in, like, one of the kid's brothers is dead, and he thinks about that and how his dad wanted it to be him and not the other brother. And then when they finally find Ray Brower's body after being hit by the train, it just changes their lives. And it is light and it is fun, but there's also these heavy elements in it as well. And that's something I noticed that I was a little off on. I was like, is this supposed to be fun and lighthearted, and they're going to throw some 20-sided dice? Is it supposed to be heavy and a little bit more mature? I guess when you put kids in, it's got to be both. You got to figure out a way how to blend that and mix it in.
I think they do a good job. I'm really high on the show right now. I mean, I'm going to be a little bit of a fangirl because I'm really, really high on it.
Right. In the chat, Floyd says he thought the lab opening was unnecessary. Not sure what that was telling us.
I'm not sure either, but I still have 4 more episodes to watch, so
yeah,
maybe then I'll know.
Right. I think it was just telling us that something inside this small town, something weird is going on. But to his point, based on the way this first episode goes, which of course is called The Vanishing of Will Byers, we probably could have gotten that tension that we get when the episode concludes.
I think that perhaps the opening scene has to do with whatever that alien creature is that takes Will, we assume, that he sees.
Yeah.
Came from also kill that guy at the lab, maybe. Or was involved in that.
I took it as...
I took it as
the opening lab scene was... I think they were just trying to tell you that fucked up shit's going to happen, and it's not... And it goes beyond the unexplainable. Like they're trying to anchor it in some sort of real world lab thing. So you don't just think it's some random creature running around making people disappear. I think that's what I took from it. Like they were trying to cement it in some kind of science.
I think that lab is a sketchy place, and I think that's what's going to come out.
Obviously. So let's talk about the Wheeler's home. Let's talk about Mike Wheeler. So it starts off, Mike and his friends are playing some D&D. Mike's running a game, and the kids are fighting some troglodytes.
They've been playing for 10 hours, guys. 10 hours.
10 hours. So this shit rings true for me, because this was me in 8th grade right here. This is exactly the shit I would do. We'd hang out in a friend's house. We would play for hours on end. Our parents would tell us to go to bed, and we wouldn't, and we would keep playing D&D and throwing dice.
This is what you did last night.
I wish. It's been a long time. So, not that long, but a long time. But yeah, we played a lot, and I immediately felt a kinship to these kids. It starts off with the 80s synth opening, the Stephen King typeface. We're setting up a weird, sketchy lab where a man gets pulled into a ceiling. We know this kid's going to disappear by the end of this episode, and this kid is playing D&D. So the nostalgia factor is high, but we have to make sure that we're not judging purely on nostalgia. So I thought it was kind of neat that it brought me there. I felt a kinship to them. I thought the kids were smart. I thought they did a good job. Their performances were... I felt a real kinship to Mike, in a sense. Mm-hmm. Which is weird because I grew up in a single mom household for the most part, so you'd think I'd be more like Will.
Yeah, but Will's disappeared, so you can't bond with him.
But I was always the guy running the games and telling the other guys what they were encountering, and it just took me back, especially doing that shit for the first time when you were a little kid. It was a lot of fun with your friends. Like I said, no responsibility, setting things up, but there's a little more here.
Yes.
There's a little more than these kids are just playing some Dungeons and Dragons. What was it that you picked up on this scene? Obviously, you didn't pick up on the nostalgia D&D factor.
No, I've never played D&D. I didn't even know what they were playing, really.
Yeah, you did. Stop pretending.
Anyway.
Stop pretending you're too cool.
What was interesting to me is, this will come back later, because when they're talking on the walkie-talkies, they say, Will could have protected himself, but instead he did the more risky move for the group. While they're playing, he throws a fireball instead of protection, which is harder, I guess, but it helps everybody.
Yes.
I'm assuming. So you have to roll a 13, I guess, and Will rolled a 7, but Mike doesn't see, so they say, don't tell Mike. At the end of the scene, Will says to Mike as he's leaving.
Can I jump in? I think they were saying that had he cast protection, it would have been good for him personally.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay.
Yeah.
The fireball was meant to
help the group.
Right.
So they say, just don't tell Mike. But as Will's leaving, he says to Mike, hey, I rolled a 7, so the Demogorgon got me.
Right.
And I think that is a great line and great foreshadowing, and I love it.
And it pays off quickly.
I love it.
Yeah. It tells us a little bit about Will, right? He's honest. He was honest, where Lucas said, oh, did he see what it was? Then don't even
don't tell him.
So Will, we know, is honest. He has this innocence to him. He decided to try to...
He's sensitive. We hear that.
Yep, he's sensitive. He decided to try to help the party by casting this fireball spell, needing to roll a 13 on a 20-sided die, which is not super hard, but not super easy either. And he decided that he was going to do that instead of protecting himself. So it shows you he's kind of selfless as well.
He cares. He's a sweetie.
He's a sweet boy. So anyway, he says goodnight to Dustin. Lucas says goodnight to them. Dustin and Will race for a bit. And then Will heads off on his own. They decide...
restricted area.
Kids on bike, riding home at night after a late-night gaming session.
Something that people don't do anymore because you can't even ride your bike in the world.
Too many weirdos.
And helicopter parents.
There you go. And he manages to fall off his bike.
Because he sees an alien.
He sees something weird. We don't know what it is.
I call it an alien because that's what I want to call it.
Fair enough.
It's probably not an alien, but that's what I want to call it.
It's some huge, oddly shaped creature.
It really scared me the first time I watched this, and all of a sudden that creature was in front of him, and it really scared me when he saw it through the clothesline from his house.
I know.
I thought it was very tense, and it really creeped me out. They did a very good job.
It reminded me of like the Slender Man stuff. If you
Yes.
Google Slender Man images, it's really creepy. Like the tall guy that
I felt
steals
like
kids.
I was reading a freaking creepypasta.
There you go. So Will manages to run his ass home, and he gets into the house. He sees the tall creature, like you mentioned, beyond.
His dog is barking like crazy, and for 3 times in a row, my dog also barks like crazy.
Through the hanging clothes. The creature starts to stalk him. His dog barks, as you mentioned. He tries to call someone for help, but then the telephone
911.
gets a little funky. Starts making some weird noises. It gets hot. A little lightning or whatever shoots out. And Will rushes to the shed. He loads up his .22 bolt-action rifle, which made me happy. And then we have this very tense moment. Again, good stuff by this kid, Will. He starts to shake. He's afraid. He pulls up the rifle, and we get this weird moment. And the lights go out. Will is gone.
Yeah, very creepy.
It was wild. It was pretty crazy. I really liked this tension building. I thought it was great. I loved the kid and how good he was. I liked the tension that he felt. I liked the fact that he went for a gun. Like, this kid's a sensitive, nice kid, but he knew that he could retreat and try to get a firearm and try to protect himself, which was incredible. I like that. I like that he has agency. He's not just a victim. He tries to do stuff.
Right.
In a very short time, we learn a lot about Will, which I think is good storytelling, which happens immediately. Like I said, the characterization of these kids happens rapidly.
Because we don't spend a lot of time with Will.
No.
But we feel like we know him pretty well.
Yes, absolutely. So, opening credits come up.
Awesome theme music I wrote in all caps.
Absolutely. And then we cut over to Jim Hopper's house, the chief.
Yeah, I like him. He's a cool dude.
We start to track his home. It's messy. He wakes up.
Smokes a cigarette.
Yeah, his morning routine is...
Takes some pills.
His morning routine, he takes some pills, smokes a cigarette, showers, puts on his police uniform, and he heads out. Meanwhile, his TV is reporting power outages across the county.
And the weather is going to be rainy tonight.
Rainy weather tonight. And then we move over to the Byers' house. So this is Will's family, where we meet Joyce.
And Jonathan.
Welcome back, Winona Ryder.
Oh, gosh, I love her.
Talk to me about Winona Ryder.
As an actress?
Yeah, let's talk
about how
it.
she like shoplifted that one time.
Yeah, whatever you want to talk about.
Winona Ryder is an awesome person, and I love her. And Reality Bites. That's really all I have to say.
Wow, do you care to quantify those opinions? That's what podcasting is
for. Have you
for.
seen Reality Bites?
Yes,
It's amazing. I I wanted like Ethan Hawke and Winona Ryder to just be married forever and to never age. It was my dream. That's all. I have to say that.
Anything else?
I like Winona Ryder. I was a big fan of her when I was younger, when she was in everything.
She was.
Before
Yeah,
she
once
started
upon a
being in
time.
Adam Sandler movies and shoplifting. And then she disappeared. And now she's back, and I'm happy to have her.
She is pretty awesome. I am a huge fan of Winona Ryder. Of course, I'm the perfect age to have been in love with her for a few years. I 100% was in love with her. Edward Scissorhands,
Of
Heathers, Beetlejuice, even in Bram Stoker's Dracula, where she was older. Not older, but not a kid.
Alien 4 or whatever.
Yeah, we don't talk about it. And I have to say that I think it's funny that this show has decided to talk about this mid to late 80s thing with Winona Ryder, which is when she was kind of coming into her own in film. And now we're going back and reinserting Winona. This feels like it's right in her wheelhouse, this time period. Maybe not the character. Obviously, this is a different character for her. But to see where she was, Winona Ryder, she
would have been Nancy.
She
in
would
the
have been
actual
Nancy.
1983 movie.
Yes, that's what I'm getting to. She definitely would have been Nancy. She would have been that character that was smarter than everybody else, just like in Heathers. She hangs out with the popular kids. She's smarter than the popular kids. She bridges the gap between the popular kids and these not-so-popular kids, and that's exactly her character. And Veronica, I think, is her name in Heathers, if I'm not mistaken. And it was crazy to think about this, to see her in a TV series, because Winona's always been in big films.
Right.
And to see her in this role, which harkens back to when she was in her heyday. I just think that was cool to bring her into this. Now, I couldn't have judged Winona Ryder's acting when I was a young man, late teens, early 20s. I wouldn't have known any better as to what good acting was and good acting wasn't. I couldn't tell you. So whenever this came up, knowing that her career kind of took a nosedive a bit there, as I started to really learn more about movies and films and stuff like that, I was curious, is she going to be any good?
Me too.
Is she going to suck? Is she going to be good? I don't even know. I couldn't tell you if Winona Ryder was a good actress like not that long ago. I thought she was good in Bram Stoker's Dracula, but even then I was like, is she good? I don't even know if that was good. I couldn't tell you. I'd have to watch it again. I haven't seen it in years.
Yeah, and some of that stuff is still like how I feel about Reality Bites is so like grounded in nostalgia that I don't even know if it's any good, but I will never not love it with my soul.
Sure. So whenever she appeared on screen, I was wondering, okay, is this going to be any good? So here's what I have to say. I think she is pretty damn good.
I agree.
This role is very challenging because she's going through this incredible sense of loss, this incredible sense of guilt around working too much, being a single mom, not knowing what's going on in the household because of the way she has to work to provide for her kids. And she's got this very humble home that's a fucking mess. And she has to go through this range of emotions that are very challenging for an actress to do the whole time. Part of the problem with this role is you're not setting her up to be a dynamic person. If she's just going to be the grieving mother, you're kind of boxing her in a little bit to say, okay, you're just going to be a grieving mother. You have to show the sense of loss, the sense of grief and guilt, and that's what you have to do. That's fucking exhausting. Mm-hmm. Okay, I know it's something she's great in. Girl Interrupted, I just remembered that.
Oh, God, yeah.
She was really good in that. I just remembered that as I'm talking. But so here I am thinking, how is this going to play out? And that's what I want to see. As the series moves forward, I want to see how this plays out. How is she going to, how is this role going to be something deeper than a woman who has lost her child? Because if every scene involving her is going to be her crying, I think we're going to start to lose sympathy, and we're going to go, okay, we just want to find out what happens.
I don't know if we're going to, it would be lose sympathy per se. I think it would just
exhausting.
Be like,
it'll be exhausting.
It gets tiring to watch because it's a tiring thing. I'm sure it's tiring to act that way.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure it's very, very draining to play a role like this. And that's why I give her a lot of credit because, I mean, my notes on these scenes with her about how she interacts and how you watch her go from being annoyed that she doesn't know where he is.
Yes.
To starting to be a little worried, to be
some guilt,
to being
for sure.
guilty, to being frantic, to being depressed, to being scared. You just watch this range of emotions, and every one it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse as the episode goes on.
Yeah.
And she realizes, oh my God, this kid is actually gone.
It's awesome. I really like this. I really like this stuff from her. And my only concern is the other shoe going to drop? Is something going to change that makes her be part of this, be part of whatever it is that's going on with the vanishing
the larger
of Will
story.
Byers. Right. I would imagine if they're paying for Winona Ryder, they're going to do some shit with Winona Ryder, and I look forward to it.
Oh, for sure.
And that's what we have here. Did he come home last night? Jonathan assumes he stayed at the Wheeler's house, which is what you did in 1983 when you were a kid. You slept at your friend's house because you played D&D all night, and you rode your bike home, and you didn't have your fucking parents up your ass, making you have anxiety problems when you were older. So that's what happened. You fucking did shit. You rode your bike at night. You went home. You stayed out. You did stuff. It was okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Didn't get kidnapped by aliens.
Yeah.
It was a different time.
Yeah, once in a while a kid would go missing. What are you going to do? You know, he was too slow. But yeah, it was definitely a different time. I think there's a lot more anxiety today because of the information at your fingertips. I think,
and also because there's more freaking crazies in the world.
You think so, or do you think
shit.
we just know more about them now that we have cell phones?
Maybe we just know that there's
I think
crazies.
So. I think there's always been fucking weirdos out
And
there.
I watch murder shows from the 80s, and it seems like there were pretty crazy people back then.
Come home when the street lights come on. That was the rule. So yeah, Joyce calls Karen Wheeler, and she says, "Hey,
is that Will I hear in the background?"
Now, this is a very slick thing that Winona does right here. And I know it's in the script, but she sells it, and I believe her. And here's what I like about it. Whenever she says, whenever Karen inquires with Joyce about Will, she just says, oh, no, he just left early for school. So she lies.
Yes.
Because she doesn't want to feel embarrassed about not knowing where her fucking kid is.
Yes.
And that's a very important tell for the Joyce character. Because it tells us that
she's worried about how she's perceived by other people.
yes, like most people are, especially single mom trying to make it. She doesn't want people to think, look, I don't know, I know how to raise my fucking kid, stay off my back. And I thought that was a nice touch for Joyce, and it humanized her in a way that I thought was relevant. So we go from the Byers house to Hawkins Middle School. The boys discuss Will.
He's
and
not
then
there.
The two bullies arrive.
They're the worst.
Classic bully trope stuff here. Midnight, frog face, and toothless. The boys make fun, then they leave, and then Mike tells Dustin that he thinks his body oddities are cool, essentially.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
They
Mike
probably
is
are the nerdy people. I don't know.
well. What I like about Mike is that
He's a sweetie too.
you see him running the game. You see him taking on a leadership role, which is what happens a lot of times. Kids that age, he's going to run the game. He acts as a buffer between the two kids when they don't get along. When Dustin gets insulted by the older kids, he picks them up. When the kids knock him down, figuratively, he picks them back up by saying, I think it's kind of cool that you can do that shit. And
You're
that,
like a superhero.
yeah, that is something a little kid does that's showing that he has leadership qualities. And I think that tells us a lot about Mike Wheeler, who is my favorite character in this show. He's great. Love the kid. I feel an affinity with Mike Wheeler. Does that make me a narcissist?
I feel an affinity with Nancy Wheeler. I'm just kidding. I was never like that. Literally ever.
Yeah.
I was more like Barb, like the nerdy person who was like to my friend, like, oh my God, you're making out with someone cool. Awesome. I just make out with all the nerds.
Outstanding. So Steve wants to meet Nancy in the bathroom for some making out.
After Barb and Nancy have a conversation, and Nancy's like, me and Steve just made out a couple of times. We're not in a relationship. And then he leaves her a love letter, and Barb's like, you just better still hang out with me.
And by love letter, you mean let's meet in the bathroom.
Yeah, that's romantic.
Super hot. They make out hard on the wall, that real adolescent, painful boner makeout.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, didn't anybody else have to pee? Were they in the men's room or the women's room? I had a lot of questions about this, honestly.
Do you?
Yeah.
You never made out in the men's room before?
I've actually never made out in a bathroom.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it was like a bathroom in somebody's house. I guess maybe that's happened in my life, but definitely not a public restroom.
In
I know
school,
people make
especially.
out. Oh, no, I think I have probably made out with somebody in a bathroom before. Just
Excellent.
kidding.
So Steve is dumb, Nancy is smart. So we set up a kind of tropey thing here, but whatever, which is essentially Steve is dumb and popular, Nancy's smart and kind of popular because she's pretty.
Yeah.
They're from the different sides of the railroad tracks, as you know.
They're in love.
They're in love. And he's supposed to be a bad boy, but man, I tell you, this kid was not a bad boy in my school.
No, he's a sweetie pie, too.
He has a tucked-in, striped button polo shirt, long sleeve polo, horizontal stripes tucked in to his khakis. He's a bad boy? I don't know about that. He doesn't look like a bad boy to me.
He looks kind of like a little preppy little nerd.
Looks like he would probably end up on some sort of college sports team, which is not that popular, but just popular enough to where
he's like Emilio Estevez in the Breakfast Club.
I like it.
I know you get mad when I interrupt you, but it came to me. I couldn't lose it.
Yeah. Well, you don't interrupt me that much, so maybe I'll get used to it if you just did it a little more. Anyway, Nancy needs to study. She's very sure about this studying.
She needs to. Her GPA is a 3.999.
Right.
In case anybody didn't know, which means she needs a 100 on this test.
Right. So she agrees that she's going to study with Steve later tonight. So what do you think about the teenage presence in this film?
This is what I like about this TV show. I believe I said this to you when we were watching it. We get so many differing perspectives. We have the adults.
Yes.
We have the teenagers.
Yes.
We have the adolescents.
Yes.
So as an adult, I'm an adult now, even though I pretend I'm not.
Oh, yeah.
As an adult watching this show, I feel like I can relate to every faction of it. And I like that it's not just told from one perspective. I like that we see the adolescent kids and you're like, remember when I was a kid? You see the teenagers and you're like, remember when I made out with that person in that bathroom? And then you see the adults and you're like, oh God, that's what life's like now. It's so hard.
Yeah. It's like The Simpsons. Like every perspective is represented
exactly.
and you can relate to the basic Americana of it all.
I think that that's hard to do.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to have a show where, just like you said, because you're dealing with super adult themes, but you have main characters who are adolescents. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I like it. It's a great point. And I like how they're all involved. We're getting a POV on all of them. And there's some tonal shifts. You get the frantic stuff with Joyce. You have the investigatory stuff that starts with Chief Hopper. You have the kids and them feeling they want to help their friend. And I like that. I like that we get to see these different facets of this through line.
You have Nancy who just wants to make out with dudes.
Right. We have Nancy who just wants to make out with dudes. I'm assuming...
And pass her chem test.
Right. All right, let's go to the police station and talk about Jim.
Is that Hopper's first name? Because
Yes.
I just call him Hopper because
Yes.
he's adorable and I love him.
So Jim Hopper, he looks like the rugged version. He looks like he could be Chris Pratt's brother, maybe. I know Chris Pratt's rugged now, but he used to be doughy and funny. Now they're making him like rugged and handsome in a kind of off way, and that's how I feel like they do with this guy. Like they could be related. This guy's kind of got that big, little out of shape, but kind of big, brawny, manly.
They're kind of like I kind of have a crush on him.
Yeah, I gotcha. Looks like he knows his way around a woman.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he's banged some women for sure.
I hope so.
Including Joyce.
Don't
Byers.
you say my woman Joyce. That's my Joyce.
They definitely banged. 100%.
My friend's mom's name was Joyce.
Did she bang Hopper?
No,
Okay.
she looked nothing like this woman. She looked like a lunch lady.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
How do you know what known as not a lunch lady?
Well, I don't know if she could get that job with the shoplifting charges.
That's true.
Did those
True.
get dismissed?
Probably not.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Let's not speculate. All right. He says good morning to everyone. He walks in smoking. This is something people did in the 80s. They smoked everywhere.
I know. It's so crazy to think about that.
Yes. We see the humdrum of Jim's police life. Yard gnomes have gone missing. He says good morning to everybody. There's no action in Hawkins. None. Flo tells him that this Joyce woman, who we start to see might have a history with Jim, is upset because her son didn't come home, seems to be missing. Even this doesn't cause alarm with him. So he's a bit jaded by this. Joyce immediately comes off as paranoid about Will because she's there.
She's just been waiting in the office for him to come in.
And he's like, she's like, he's sensitive. His dad called him a fag.
Rude.
His name is Lonnie, I guess, the dad. He's a shitbag.
Clearly. He called his kid a fag.
Yeah. Jim thinks that Will is likely with Lonnie. So here's...
I like this one part when they're having a conversation. You can tell he doesn't take her seriously at first. And she's like, oh, he's not like that. He doesn't play hooky. The kids make fun of him. They make fun of his clothes. And Hopper's like, what's wrong with his clothes? And she's like, does that matter? And he says, maybe.
Jim used to be a bully, we're seeing.
Clearly.
So we have, at this point, Jim is the skeptical POV.
You're going to call him Jim the whole time? Because I want to call him Hopper.
Call him whatever you want.
All right, fine. 99 out of 100 times a kid goes missing there with a relative.
Yes.
I don't know if those odds are true, but I do know that when kids go missing, they're often with a relative. That is definitely true.
They are often with a relative. And in this case, based on this Lonnie character, which we're starting to colorize immediately, by the way he's talking about his boy Will, we think he's probably a piece of shit and probably...
he left Winona.
Yeah, probably with him at some point. Well, Winona kept hanging around with some guy in weird leather with scissors for hands. And
that's true.
That
made things awkward.
Scared poor Lonnie away. What did you notice Winona's haircut in this? It looked like Edward Scissorhands may have given her that haircut.
I didn't really pay too much attention to her haircut.
You didn't?
But I'm glad.
No.
I'll look at it next time.
You should. I wonder if no, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate. But anyway, he thinks Will is likely with Lonnie.
Can we just make one comment on the other really funny part in this scene where he says the worst thing that's ever happened in this town was an owl attack somebody's head because he thought her hair was a nest. Did you not? I've watched this episode 3 times now, and I laughed out loud every single time. I don't even care. It was funny.
Yep. Apparently, eagle attacks or owl attacks are more common than missing persons in the town of Hawkins.
Which is, I guess, a pretty cool thing, honestly.
And now we get a little bit of a look in on the other part of the story, which is where this started.
The lab.
The lab. And it's possible that this scene is easier to swallow as a result of the pre-credit scene. It's possible that that setup made this scene easier to pay attention to because we're seeing how this whole thing started.
I think opening it at the lab makes it easier to go back to the lab when you're getting all this other stuff with these characters you kind of care about. Like, we need some way to tie that in, so we just kind of start with it.
Right. So we see Private Joker, now an old man.
Good Lord.
And a few other men, or Matthew Modine, as it were. Man, it took him this long to recover from Cutthroat Island. Did you see that movie?
Cutthroat Island?
Yeah.
No.
Ooh, tough movie to watch.
I did not.
Not a good movie. So he was with that tall chick. What the hell's her name? The one that jumps down into the chasm with her friend?
I've never seen
Thelma
the
and
movie.
Louise.
Which one?
Gina Davis, is that her name? Yeah.
From The Fly, you could have made a better reference to something I care about that involves Jeff Goldblum.
Gina Davis and Matthew Modine are in Cutthroat Island, I think, together. He's supposed to play a swashbuckler. I don't know. I can't help you. It was not good. So, moving right along. We see Private Joker.
A.K.A. Dr. Brenner.
Dr. Brenner. I should write that down because I wrote Joker the whole time. Brenner. Dr. Brenner. Sounds German and suspicious. These guys are wearing hazmat suits. They also are carrying MP5Ks.
Yeah, they are.
Just in case the kids get out of line. Anyway, they're walking around with their submachine guns. And we see them going to this place where apparently that man was running around.
Weird thing on the wall.
Weird stuff on the wall. This really reminds me of Aliens when they are down near the reactors and the Marines are told by their lieutenant that they cannot fire their weapons down here. And all that resin and all the alien biology on the walls, it was just alive. And this is even worse. You see it like pulsating goo.
Squelching is
Pumping.
what the closed captions told me.
Squelching with life. Ooh, gross. So we are dealing with some sort of crazy biological creature.
Yes.
At this point, I assume it's an extraterrestrial, but I don't know for certain.
Obviously. Well, not obviously, but I like aliens.
And then, of course, we see a weird organism, and then this, I call it like the alien root system, the extraterrestrial root system attached to the wall. The men mention a girl who could not have gone too far.
This is what they say. This is the conversation.
Go.
They say, this is where it came from. Yes. And the girl, she can't have gone far. Smash cut to girl in a buzz cut in a hospital gown.
The girl.
The girl.
We see naked feet crossing dry leaves outside. She's wearing a hospital smock.
Yeah, she is.
She zeroes in on this gentleman named Benny's Diner.
I love Benny. And I know people in the chat room are already saying they love Benny. And I have never been more sad about a character dying so early in something.
I know.
This was not right.
What the fuck, Benny?
He was awesome.
Benny
I wanted to hug him and be his friend.
Benny gets capped by what looks like an English teacher that's recently divorced.
She reminded me of somebody, but I can't think of who it is. It'll
a
come
shitty
to me.
English teacher recently divorced who hates children.
Sounds about right.
That's what it looked like to me. So Benny talks to a few customers. He's charming. And then, as we're going to come to learn, this girl's name is 11.
Yeah, we're not there yet, though.
That's okay. We got to refer to her or something. So she sneaks into the kitchen to eat some fries. She's ravenously hungry. She looks a little on the thin side, and then Benny sees her, gives chase, easily catches her, and we cut away.
He's surprised that she's a girl.
Surprised.
Which I was for a second, too. At first, I was like, no, this is a dude. And then I realized, no, it's just a little girl with a buzz cut. And
right. So we get to Mr. Clark's class. He tells the kids about a ham radio, and this triggers all kinds of excitement with the children.
I don't know about this nerdy science teacher.
You're not sure about Mr. Clark? You don't
I
trust
don't know
him?
why. I just think he's weird as a character, and he's really tight with these kids, and he has that conversation with Hopper. I'm like, why are we seeing him so much?
You think he's going to show the kids his ham radio?
Maybe, honestly.
Gotcha.
Maybe.
Show me on the ham radio where Mr. Clark touched you, Kenny, or Mikey Wheeler. Yeesh.
Anyways, they can talk to Australia on that ham radio.
They can. How about that? Talk about a gaze lane.
But they're not going to talk to Australia right now because they have to talk to Hopper.
Yeah, because the principal bursts in with Hopper, and they make a Mirkwood joke, which goes right over the adults' heads, and they talk about Will. Will seemingly missing.
Yes.
The kids know this. He didn't show up for work. We know this because
for
Joyce...
work? He has a job?
Yeah, you know.
Oh, my God.
They start them
Child
kids,
labor.
Fuck yeah. Start them kids early back in the day. So they determine... The kids know the direction Will would have taken to go home, a place they call Mirkwood. Lucas and Dustin argue a little bit about Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Mike, again, being the mediator, breaks them up, and we are treated to a Joyce flashback. So we're starting to bring our characters together. We now have Hopper wrapped up with the kids.
And wrapped up with Joyce.
The Vanishing of Will Byers. Yeah, wrapped up in Joyce is what I like to say.
Yeah.
So we see Will in a clubhouse of sorts. So this is a bit of a flashback, a nice memory of Will and Mom, but it's hard cut to Joyce and Jonathan, her older son, who is about Nancy's age, searching and yelling for poor Will.
Yes.
We move back to Benny's place. Benny feeds the girl, questions her while she eats. Gave her a shirt. Wants to know what's going on. She ignores him and keeps eating until he takes the burger. And then he sees the tattoo. We learn about the name 11. He gives the burger back. Talk to me about this interaction in this scene.
Well, I love Benny, and he's adorable. And I like that he takes care of her. I like that that's his instinct, is to give her food, but he wants more information.
Yes.
He's worried about her.
Yes.
You know, that she ran away from a bad situation. Did someone hurt her? And he immediately cares for her and wants to protect her, which I like. And he calls Child Protective Services for help, which is the right thing to do when a small child shows up at your diner and she looks like she's been starved and mistreated. But what he doesn't know is when he's calling Child Protective Services, she's making fans stop with her mind.
Making annoying, rattling fans stop with her mind bullets.
Yeah.
So, okay, 11's got some powers.
Yes, she does.
Mind powers.
Mm-hmm.
She's wearing a smock. We've been introduced to a lab. We know she's coming from that lab based on what Private Joker said.
And they care about where she is. So she couldn't have gone far.
So they say.
But yeah, because they need her mind powers.
Mind powers. Men who stare at goats type of stuff. So I like Benny here. I like the tough love. I like he's like, I'm going to take the sandwich until you give me something. Gives it back to her, calls the people, and she shuts off the fan. We've ratcheted up the stakes a little bit. We've learned a little bit about this girl. Is this girl connected to Will, and how is she connected to Will? The first thing I thought was, is this like the old switcheroo changeling? Like they've replaced Will with this girl, and she's going to pretend to be Will. But no, that wasn't the case.
That's how it was going to be when the show first started,
and
when I just watched the previews, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's crazy. One kid goes missing, and a new stranger kid shows up.
Right.
So Jim
and then it's like the imposter. She pretends she's Will.
So good. So Jim and a couple officers search for Will. They find Will's bike. Jim picks it up. And it's a short scene, but it's effective. Jim reaches down, he picks up that bike, and we just hold on them in silence for a minute.
Because he's like, oh, shit.
So this is now escalating. It's not like he's randomly somewhere. Once they find the abandoned bike, something is wrong.
Yeah.
The stakes go up. And we have these back-to-back scenes where at Benny's place, we have 11 shutting off a fan with her mind powers, and then we find the bike. It's immediately something that points to potential foul play, that the kid's bike is gone. The good news is...
It's not gone. It's there.
That he's gone and the bike is there. The good news is the bike isn't destroyed and full of blood.
That's true.
It's simply down in the grass, or in this case, the fall leaves.
That's true. Because Joyce does ask when, they talk, well, could he have been injured? And he's like, yeah, but why would he leave his bike? Like, he could obviously walk away. That bike means something. Or maybe Joyce doesn't say that. Maybe one of the other officers says that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, they talk about that when we go back to the Wheeler's house. But So we get a real brief look in, which I missed the first viewing of this episode, and we see a group of people monitoring phone conversations.
Yes, which leans into Joyce and Lonnie. Yeah.
We know that this is going deep. We know that this is going to go deep in terms of this lab, what's going on with this new girl and her mind powers 11, and the missing Will Byers. So Joyce calls Lonnie. It does not go well, does it?
Some girl answers, and Joyce is not happy. And then she calls back, and she says that a 12-year-old girl answered the phone, and she's concerned. Or some teenager, she says. It's funny.
Joyce at this point asks if the bike has blood on it. Jim looks around the house. So Jim comes to the house right after the phone call. He starts to look around. Now, I got the impression that based on the way they're portraying Joyce at this point, a little disheveled, a little out of sorts, a little absentee, but not because she doesn't care, but because she has responsibilities. But I get the feeling that Jim is skeptical still.
Yes.
Almost like he doesn't completely trust Joyce. So I think there's some deeper intimacy between these two. There's something about Joyce that puts Jim off, about how he just immediately starts to look around the house.
Right.
Like, what's going on here?
And he keeps saying, like, well, he had a key. He could have came home.
Right.
Basically.
Jim makes his way outside and says hello to the dog, makes his way to the shed.
The dog's barking at the shed to let him know. Like,
sure.
Hey, there's some shit going down in there. I'm a dog. I know things.
He ends up looking and finding the box of 22 rounds. He tries to turn the shed light on. It comes on briefly and then winks out with crazy sound effects. It goes back out. He looks around with his flashlight. The light flicks on. He's startled. One of the officers was there saying they were calling for him. Is this something I'm reading into? He didn't hear them calling for him? Was he just in La La Land?
I think he was really, certainly, because didn't he see like some broken stuff, like as if there was some type of struggle there?
He did.
And so he was really like, a lot of suspicion. I think his mind was definitely on that.
Yeah, he was definitely distracted. It was
I don't know if the alien was there, but it might have been.
One of the officers startles him, and then he decides that we need to form a search party.
Yeah,
so
let's get moving.
Jim is now convinced that this kid is not with a parent, is not with a relative.
He's spooked.
He's spooked immediately. As soon as he gets to the shed, sees there is a struggle, it starts with the bike, and it quickly snowballs into, let's form a search party, tell Flo to get on it, get the flashlights, we're going to be searching at night.
We go quickly from him just thinking Joyce is being a little crazy to him actually being concerned himself.
In the fact that he says they're going to search at night, which is usually fruitless, means that he knows that time is of the essence. He knows that they need to start searching now.
Yes.
So, back at the Wheelers' house, they're all eating dinner. Mike wants to do something to help find his friend. Classic Mike move, based on what we know.
Classic Mike.
Right? Nancy wants to study with Barbara, so she says.
Yeah, but we know she just wants to make out with Steve.
Tonsil hockey, as they used to call it back in the day. Mom says, no, not while Will is missing. A reasonable thing for mom to say when a kid goes missing. So I like this. I like that we see, we could have alienated the Joyce character by changing this dialogue a little. It could have been the Wheelers saying, oh, crazy Joyce, blah, 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 right? They could have discredited Joyce as a character based on their POV and what they would have said about her, but they didn't do that. They just said, you know what? Let's sit tight until Will turns up. We want to play it safe. A totally reasonable request from mom. But Mike blows up Nancy and mentions Steve. Nancy gets pissed. She storms off. And Mr. Wheeler...
Typical sibling shit.
Bullshit. Typical sibling bullshit. And then Mr. Wheeler says that he also cares about Will, but he seems dead inside.
Yeah, he's definitely dead inside. I don't know what Mr. Wheeler's deal is. I don't know if maybe he's an alien or an alien took his soul, but he is quite the weirdo.
He's dead inside. This guy definitely looks like he requires hard punishment to become sexually aroused. Like he really needs to be smashed in the face, stepped on, whipped. He needs his dick kicked. He's just dead.
Oh my God.
That's what I get from Mr. Wheeler. I think he's a freak.
Well, that's not what I got when I looked at him.
What did you
okay,
get?
Weirdo.
Tell me what you got.
Nothing about his sexual proclivities.
Nothing?
No.
He just looks like a regular Joe. I think he's a freak.
He reminds me of, and I'm just sure there's a reference like 3 people will get, but there's like this episode of Buffy called What's My Line? And there's this traveling salesman, but he's actually like made of bugs, but he kind of like looks like Mr. Wheeler. And then he just turns into like all these bugs.
There you go.
Whatever. Anyways, he looks like the Bugman, Cuckoo Cuckoo from Buffy.
Ooh, Floyd in the chat says he reminds me of the head vampire from Lost Boys. That is a good one. I love it.
Whoa.
I love it. So, yeah, I think Mr. Wheeler's a freak. I don't trust him. Maybe he's got that kid locked up in a basement somewhere. I don't know. I don't trust him.
The aliens are all just pretend. It's Mr. Wheeler is a psychopath.
One single
He keeps
thing.
children in his basement.
Mom stomps off, also mad at Dad, because she's on to him. She
knows he's dead inside.
She knows he's dead inside, and that he's kind of a freak. So this quickly moves right into the night search, does it not?
Yeah, and then we see freaking Mr. Clark again, who I really don't trust, that shifty science teacher.
So here's what I like about this. This is so small town shit to me, which is the teacher, Flo, the receptionist, everybody's part of the search.
Yeah.
So this thing keeps ramping up. Mr. Clark's helping with the search and tells Jim that Will is a good kid. They talk about Mrs. Ratliff and how she's a mummy. Jim brings up his daughter and how she knows about all this science stuff. And then when Jim walks away, we learn that
she's dead.
She's dead.
But before that, he lies because Clark asks what grade she's in. Will he ever get to see her? And he says, oh, she lives with her mom in the city. But she actually doesn't live with her mom. She's dead. I'm sure that we'll get more information on that at a later date.
Why do you think he does that? Do you think he just does it because he doesn't want to talk about it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like if something absolutely horrific and tragic like that happens to you and like people don't know, it might be easier to say shit like that.
Yeah, it fucks up your tax return because now you got to pay extra taxes once a kid.
When you pretend your kid is alive and it's dead.
No, but once a kid bites the dust, it changes your dependence and now you fucking lose more money in the government.
Oh my God,
right?
you're a cold human being.
I'm called Mr. Clark. I teach science on the weekends. He's a creep, isn't he, Mr. Clark?
I already said Mr. Clark is a creep.
Yeah, I don't know about that. He's freaking me out, though.
He's a bad guy for sure.
Yeah. Andrea says in the chat, pale science teacher, creepy mustache, definitely into killing and eating young boys.
Yeah, 100%.
You know
Cannibalism is definitely happening.
You take him and you take the, quote, salesman, regular old sales guy. He's not weird. Him and Mr. Clark are in cahoots. I think that's the conspiracy.
Wait, which sales guy?
I don't know. You attributed Mr. Wheeler as a salesman, so that's what I'm calling
yeah, because Mr. Wheeler reminded me of the Bugman.
But I think we got a deep conspiracy here. I think we need to look
creepy
into
men who are creeps.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, all right.
So Mike and Lucas talk via their badass giant walkie-talkies.
All I wanted when I was a kid was walkie-talkies that like you could talk to people across the road.
Yeah, this is badass. Will could have cast protection, but he cast fireball instead.
Exactly.
So they're still talking about this. So
it matters.
It does matter. But how do you think it matters?
Because it matters because it shows more about Will as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they're discussing. And they're talking about some arbitrary thing in a game. But what they're really talking about is who Will is as a person. Will would do anything for the group. He would put himself in danger to protect the group. We need to do for him what he would do for us.
I see. Okay.
Then they're using the game as a metaphor, but it's talking about who Will is as a person to them.
Right.
I think that matters.
I like your style. I like it too. So that's when Lucas has that revelation where he's like, let's meet up, because he realizes that this is what he would do for us.
Yes.
It's great. So Mike sees Steve climbing on the painful boner ladder of lust up to Nancy's room, and Steve sneaks into Nancy's room like a ninja, he calls himself. Ninjas were big in the 80s.
Sure they were.
We go back to Benny's place.
Now he's giving 11 ice cream.
He is. Benny does some dishes and chats with her. Knock comes on the door. It's Connie Frazier, looking like she's here to be an English tutor.
It's interesting because she panics 11 when there's a door, and Benny's like, "Here, I'll just get rid of whoever it is. No big deal. We're closed."
Right.
But it turns out it's social services, and Benny's like, "Oh my God, you guys got here so quick."
Isn't that weird?
And then he says where the girl is. Now she's nervous. She's like, "Yep, I get it." And then he starts to say that her voice sounded different on the phone.
I yelled, "Don't turn around."
The first time I watched this, I was so shocked. But the second when he was like, "You guys got here so quick," I was like, something is wrong.
Yes.
I know we were going to kill somebody amazing. But we did.
We did.
And I am still upset about it, honestly.
He gets the old plink, plink, plink. Down she goes, or down he goes. And then we get White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane. What do you think of the use of this song right here?
I don't know. Why?
Well,
Is it supposed to have meaning to it?
It's like a
makes
crazy.
me think of Lost.
Well,
Sorry.
White Rabbit's very much like it's very much talking about Alice in Wonderland. It's talking about drugs. It's psychedelic.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, okay. White Rabbit.
Now,
Jefferson Airplane.
What's funny about this song is it's not an 80s song. It came out in 67.
Mm-hmm.
And what I liked about the song is that it was highlighting danger. Mm-hmm. And it was a song that is not an 80s song. We've already discussed that this is an 80s nostalgic piece where we're throwing us into the 80s. And I think it's cool that the dangerous song came from the adults, and the 67 song, White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane, to me, represents this adult invasion of this children's thing. I thought that that was kind of cool. It also highlights, as Andrew's saying in the chat, some of the mystery of the rabbit hole, of what's happening, what's going on. But the other part of me thought that it was this weird invasion of something that doesn't belong to this generation's kids. It's the parents. It's 67. And it shows danger. Benny gets killed. All these people start chasing her. I thought that that was so brilliant because it's a little jarring. You're like, whoa, this is an 80s nostalgia piece. Why is this 67 classic rock tune in this? The psychedelic tune.
No.
I thought it was fucking brilliant. A brilliant choice of music. Anyway, the whole group arrives. She flees, fucking does some kind of mind bullets to these two guys who have guns on.
You guys are dead. Bye.
Kabloom, done, gone. And then we move quickly to a scene break where we get Nancy getting quizzed by that dick.
Well, first we see the boys looking for Will. They're in Mirkwood, calling for him. And then we cut to Nancy making out with Steve to Toto, Africa.
Yep.
That's really the most important thing to say about that scene.
Yes.
Is they make out, and it's a really cool song, and I like a lot.
And then there's another part where Nancy accuses Steve of being a bit of a player.
Yeah.
Because he wants a notch on his belt, and he's like, no, those other girls are sluts, you're different, blah, blah, blah.
That's what everybody says when they're a male slut. If a dude tells you you're different and beautiful and mean something, typically it means they told 7 other women that and banged them first.
Yeah. It's a good move.
Just saying.
Well, back at the Byers' house, Joyce starts to feel bad about not being around lately, and we see this scene between her and Jonathan. Yes. This is what I mean by the tonal shifts in this story. You've got this sort of adolescent innocence between Nancy. You've got this crazy moment with Benny. You got the kids and their stuff, and now you have the Byers' house, which is where we get deep.
In this, we get it from both of them because Joyce is upset. She's emotional because she hasn't been around. And Jonathan feels guilty because he was supposed to be home that night.
Yes. A lot of guilt going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Joyce says she feels that Will is close and wants Jonathan to trust her. They pick a picture. This is the great picture. Mm-hmm. This is the right one. It's very emotional. It's very sad.
Yes.
Winona Ryder does such a good job.
Awesome.
Such a good job.
And the kid does too. Jonathan Byers.
Yeah. I like
Byers, excuse me. I like this kid because it's very typical for a household that lacks a positive male role model for the oldest male, especially in the kids, to take on that parent role.
That's in any, and it's the same in
women too.
Opposite.
Young girls.
The
motherly role.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I say, because that's something that I personally, this touched me personally, seeing the interaction between the two in an opposite way in my life, where I was the oldest of a bunch of girls and there was not really a motherly figure in my life, and it was just my dad. And that's it's I relate to Jonathan a lot. Also being a little weird and having a hard time opening up and being very shy. Believe it or not, people listening to the podcast, I used to be very shy and weird.
She didn't talk much. Can you believe that shit?
I know. I was quiet at a time. I've changed, and Jonathan can too.
It's funny, I relate to Jonathan a little bit, but if you ask my friends I went to high school with, it wasn't hard for me to make friends. We had a pretty fucking tight friend group, so I don't relate to being a total outcast at all. We were as a group, we were a little odd. They didn't know how to, like the popular kids or these kids, they didn't really know how to deal with us. So that I get that part of it, but I wasn't like a straight loner. I had good friends that we were close to.
Right.
But I do understand that, taking the mantle on of being the dominant, strong person that people rely on. I get that.
Right.
So Joyce gets a phone call, and here's where shit gets real funky before this episode ends. And that's, she thinks it's Will. We hear noises, breathing, squelching, growling, breathing, and then bang, we see a splay of electricity. The phone receiver burns a little bit. She drops it. Joyce is certain it was Will.
From the second she hears the breathing.
Yes, that's powerful maternal shit right there.
Yeah, and I believe her.
Fucking awesome.
I mean, I know we're supposed to think it's Will as the audience watching. But I believe that about parents and like a maternal instinct that mothers
Right.
have. Like I believe that exists, and that she did know that was Will. And when she says, "I feel he's close," like I feel it. Trust me. I believe her. I don't think she's a crazy person.
Right.
I really think that her instincts are that strong. And she does a great job of that.
And I believe her too. And I'll tell you what, I might not have believed her if we didn't have all the lab stuff. Because I would think, oh, this is some kind of weird killer taunting her. It's possible we could have thought that otherwise.
Right.
We could have thought maybe this is a guy taunting. Maybe this is that Jack the Ripper thing. But not really, because we trust her and we've seen the lab stuff. And it just makes perfect sense, which I love.
Correct.
We move over to Lucas, Dustin, and Mike. We have the thunder raging outside. It's raining. Crazy shit's happening. The boys are trekking through the storm with their flashlights. Again, kids in the 80s running around.
I like Dustin's explanation of this. He's like, don't you think we're being dumb because something bad happened to Will and we're basically going to the same spot where the bad thing happened to Will with no protection?
Yes, no weapons.
I love that he's like this voice of reason. He's like, wait a second.
Right.
What we're doing is foolish right now.
And the adorable thing is that this is how adolescent boys, at least in the 80s, thought, and that was, if we had weapons, we'd be fine. As if these 10-year-olds could fight off adults, even if they had weapons. But I love that logic. He's like, if we had weapons, like, we're going to do this without weapons?
Right.
This is nuts.
It's cute.
As if weapons would make any difference.
It's cute.
And then we get a big tying up nicely, and that is 11 shows up. The boys look at her. She's alone in the rain. They got the flashlights bright on her face. Boom, we close out the episode.
Perfect way to end an episode, honestly.
Great way to end this episode. Wow. Very cool, right?
Oh, I agree.
Awesome. All right. I think we are going to talk a little bit about listener comments. Obviously, we didn't give people much time for this.
No, this is very last minute.
Is there anyone on there you want to read?
There's... Most of them just say, yes, do it.
Yeah, they talk about the music. They talk about a lot of the music, the nostalgia, etc. I think the good one is to read Andrea's. She says, this show is just great. When they introduced the kids, I was definitely thinking the Losers Club from It.
Me too.
The opening title even has a font treatment similar to Stephen King's novel, such as Cujo. She provides a picture. This show is so nostalgic, brings me back to watching horror as a kid. And on the other hand, the first scenes of Winona's character having the realization that her son is missing are also terrifying to me now more than ever as a mother of a boy. It was this dual reaction watching the scenes with the kids and putting myself in their shoes, and then the terrified mother.
Yes.
Anything that can pull you into feeling things from multiple character perspectives to me is pure gold. That's something we talked a lot about in this episode. So yeah, that's a great observation by her. John Bucket says...
That's what I was just going to read.
All right, you can do that.
Spielberg meets Carpenter meets King with a dash of Hughes and a sprinkle of Dante. Love it. The kids are all fantastic, and the music. Synth boner jams for days.
Yeah, good shit. Awesome. Yeah, I really like the direction that the series is going. I am very excited about it. I'm looking forward to talking more about it. I don't know if there's going to be more than one season. My guess is that will depend on the success of it. I don't know if we'll cover more than one season, but we're for sure going to cover a full season. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I think that seems reasonable.
Now, another thing we're going to do is that this is going to be hitting the Science Fiction Film Podcast feed, but in the show notes will be the feed for the Stranger Things feed. It will have its own podcast art. You will have to subscribe to it independently. If you are listening to this on the Science Fiction Film feed, this will be the last episode you hear on the science fiction film theme. If you want to listen to more of this, and we hope you do, make sure that you subscribe to this. We will have a link on the website, libertystreetgeek.net. It will be available on iTunes. That link will be in the show notes for this. And that's all I have to say. We know a couple things that happened, so we're going to avoid getting into any prediction territory. But Jessica, do you have anything you want to say before we close out?
I was just trying to find out if there's going to be a second season or not.
I don't think
I read some things where it said it has not been renewed for a second season. But then I have this, that they're expecting an announcement around Stranger Things Season 2 to be made fairly shortly. This was posted today because it's had some success with the episodes already. So this says that likely it'll get a release a year later from now if they pick it up. And that they probably will and will probably get an announcement soon.
Perfect.
Stranger Things is close to renewal for Season 2.
There you go. All right. Well, we are going to get out of here. We haven't 100% decided what days we're going to release this. Just keep your eyes on the feed.
We're going to try to do them quick, too, because of, like I said, the binge watching craze. We're not going to do one episode a week because you guys will be bored and watching something else by the time we finish. We're going to try to do multiple episodes.
But at the minimum, you'll get one a week. If we don't do more than one a week, we don't. But we do promise one a week on its own feed. Again, do not expect next episode to be on this feed if you're listening on the science fiction feed. We're going to drop it on both feeds, but make sure you subscribe to the Stranger Things podcast feed that we're going to drop. Okay? All right.
Catch you on the flip side.